You don't want to think about it. You don't want to wrap your head around it. And that's one of the reasons why it makes such a good thread for horror. That was probably the most hated film we've shown.
Oh, really?
I think so. Yeah, people really... I thought there were... Good people were not going to come back, I think. So he's just the guy you cast when you need somebody who would lock somebody in their shed, I guess.
Fright Club is back with your election update special. Remember last time we recorded, it was the night before the election,
it
right?
Was.
And it almost took this long to sort it out. But thank God. Looks like it has. And hope you're happy. We're happy. And we're back to talk about an interesting subject. We'll get to that in a bit. But we want to talk about the response that we got after the election nonsense about our podcast on voices in horror last time, because I thought that was a fun one.
Yeah, it was. It was a fun topic. I'm glad that we thought of it, and I thought it came out pretty well. And we had a couple of people who would have put Christopher Lee at number 1. We had him at number 3. And then Seth, our friend Seth, felt like Vincent Price deserved at least a mention.
That's a great voice.
Yeah.
That is a great voice. That would have given me an excuse to play the rap from Thriller.
I would have.
I guess.
But here's my favorite tidbit from this was that Omar led us to a William Marshall film that we had never heard of called Demetrius and the Gladiators, which is Omar's mom's favorite William Marshall movie.
Nice.
He plays Glycon. And he gets off some excellent lines as he steps in to protect Victor Mature, which was the second most interesting thing that I learned, which is that Victor Mature has a weirdly big Twitter base.
Nice. I wonder why it's taken us this long to mention Victor Mature on this podcast. But I'm glad we got it done. I think you're burying the lead, though, because we got did we get a like and a retweet from one Mr. Tony Todd?
We did! Oh, my God! How have I forgotten
on.
that? Now, Tony Todd, I imagine I've mentioned this before, he follows us because I had a fucking coronary when I saw that come up on my phone. We, of course, we'd long since followed him. We'd followed him for a very long time. And then, he's going through it 3 or 4 years later. He just decides to follow us back. And I about
nice.
Fell over. So anyway, he did. He liked and retweeted that podcast. So that was the coolest.
That is darn cool. We should get some little commemorative badge or something. I think we feel like we've earned it. But no, that was good. So Victor Mature got a mention, so we're clicking that off. And thank you for pointing us out to that, Omar, pointing us out to that movie that we haven't heard of. We'll have to look that up. Is it available anywhere?
I don't know. It is the sequel to The Robe.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, now, okay. My mom loved The Robe, and that was probably my initiation to Victor Mature as a kid. So now I'm starting to, I didn't know that there was a sequel to that.
Neither did the Schlocketeer. He responded to Omar's tweet, and that's something if you get one over on the Schlocketeer.
Boy, you're not kidding.
He knows every obscure movie ever made.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now I feel a little bit more comfortable about it. Oh, and before I forget, we have to set the record straight on that little story that I told last time. I think I got some facts wrong. We were talking about Keith David, right? And we were talking about our old editor, Richard, at the paper. We told that story about how he made Keith David mad because he was set to interview him, and he got the time zone wrong and called Keith David at the crack of dawn, and it didn't start well. Well, I guess Richard heard the podcast, and he chimed in, and I misremembered.
He claims that it was Paula Poundstone, but I think that he says he never interviewed Keith David, but I thought Keith David got mad at him because he wanted to talk about Platoon. So I also,
is that why? Okay.
But he says he never even interviewed him.
Well,
so
look,
I don't know. We're both just hallucinating.
Well, you can't blame us because I'm sure that Paula Poundstone and Keith David get mixed up for each other all the time. How can you blame us? But that's one of those deals where now when I think back on things, it seems like I'm really remembering it. Because I really thought that was what happened. I truly did. But either way, it's a good story, and I think we should keep telling it.
Okay, let's do that. I don't know, though, if we pointed out, Richard is actually the person who named our podcast.
Right, he
so
did.
We should give him credit.
He did.
Because we're telling lies about him, and yet he was nice enough to give us the name Fright Club, which was a great name.
He came up with the name Fright Club, and it is. It's a fantastic name that people have tried to steal. But we'll let that slide. All right, thank you for all that. And we also had a few votes for some that, I'm looking ahead. I'm looking ahead to my notes here about some movies that didn't make this list.
Correct.
All right, so we're not there yet. We're talking about last time out. So was that it?
The only other thing we wanted to say, we wanted to thank the UK Film Review Festival.
Yeah.
Because they screened our short film Godspeed. They had their festival last weekend, and they did a Q&A with us as filmmakers.
Yeah, that was fun.
We have both done Q&As many times over the years. Never the A part. At least not me. Now, you've probably been interviewed for things before because you're semi-famous, but nobody's ever interviewed me for anything. And it was certainly both of our first QA as filmmakers.
Yeah.
And it was Chris Olsen led it. He was great. He said such great things about the short and just made me happy again that they had accepted the film and they showed it.
It was very nice. And actually, I should thank all of you because I wasn't even going to be taking part. I was set to watch it in another room, and then you just yelled at me to come in there. So I'm like, that was unexpected fun. But yeah, thanks to everybody at the UK Film Review Festival. And they did a great job as well on pulling it off virtually, just as Nightmares Film Festival did.
Yeah.
We got an up-close look this year at how hard it is to do, not only a virtual, just a festival in general.
Yeah.
And then to pivot like this. And have to rebrand it and just start from the ground up probably in your planning. And they did a great job, too.
Yeah, they did. It was a great festival. We enjoyed so many of the films we got to see, and we're really thrilled to be a part of the program.
Okay, so now, talk about pivoting. We're talking about incest. Why?
Yeah. That's a good question. We talked like a month or so ago, 2 months ago, about grief in horror, which was another topic that I've always wanted to cover because I think that horror covers it in a way weirdly better than other types of genres of films do. But it doesn't sound like a fun time, But it was a great podcast. I thought it was a great podcast.
Yeah.
I also think that rape, in particular, rape and revenge, there's an entire sort of arm of horror that really just depicts that. And again,
True.
It's not a fun topic, but we will eventually do that topic on this podcast because there are so many movies to talk about. So incest is just one of those areas that is so horrible that you don't want to think about it. You don't want to wrap your head around it. And that's one of the reasons why it makes such a good thread for horror.
Well, I know we brought it up several times when we've talked about the fact that we can't use theme songs anymore. Back in the day when we started this, we used to do theme songs.
Yeah, we did.
And you would just throw them out there. And just like you can put together a topic so quickly, I had a theme song. So you just said incest, and I started singing We Are Family.
That's
it was
right.
perfect.
Yeah, it was.
So we've used that joke a few times. But we've never actually gotten to the subject. And now we do. So the little bit here on the notes that I was looking at, got ahead of myself, were some of the also rans that didn't make it into the final list. Although we do have Math That Is Fuzzy.
We do have fuzzy math
this week. So we have a top 6, top 5. But before that, we've got a few here that are worth a mention.
I think so. So Angel Heart. You know what? As I say Angel Heart out loud, I should point out, in a couple of instances, there are going to be spoilers. The fact,
one in particular.
Yeah.
That a
Which,
lot of people
to be honest
are
with
probably
you,
already thinking.
That's another reason why we have put this list off for so long, because there is no way to do this list without that movie.
Yeah.
And there's no way to talk about that movie without letting this spoil it. So we should just let you know in
I'm
advance.
sure longtime Fright Clubbers already know what we're talking about. But
but Angel Heart, Angel Heart has that as a thread, and that's a great movie. I love that movie. The original Crazies, that's when you start to see people go crazy and do things, and there's this very, very uncomfortable scene with the father and a daughter and
Yeah.
Pin, speaking of uncomfortable, that is an underseen gem of a movie. That is the weirdest movie. It's so bizarre, and it's really about
Is Victor Mature in it?
No. It's about a brother and sister who have a strange preoccupation with the anatomically correct doll their father has in his office. His head nurse is also very preoccupied with that doll. It's a super, super, super weird movie. But what comes down to is the brother is turning crazy between his fixation with Pin, that's the name of the doll, and his interest in his sister.
Hey.
And so it's just such a bizarre film and not great, but really seek it out. It's so weird. Crimson Peak, another. That's a Del Toro movie that I expected to be better than it was.
You know what? It may not be on this list, but it is number 1 all time on the list of movies that you spoiled for people.
I know, my God. Oh, my God.
People groaned at you.
I didn't mean to. I just spit it out.
Yeah, we were in front of the crowd. I forget what movie we were showing, but it was a live event, and it must have been just after that movie came out. And I forget what the question was or what somebody said, and you just said it right there.
And I just, as I heard myself say it, I thought, no one's seen this movie yet. I mean, it was like, it was like the weekend it came out. It's like, oh yeah, I did. I wrecked that one for a lot of people, but it's not very good. Another one that is good that not a lot of people have seen, Jugface.
Jugface, yeah. Always nice to be able to mention Jugface.
Yeah, it's one of those backwoods sort of cult things, and it's very much well worth checking out. And then another two, both of which we have actually shown before. One is We Are the Flesh.
I'm looking down at this list, and I'm thinking in my head, where's We Are the Flesh? And I'm ready to just spring it on you. I'm ready to lower that boom, and there you go. You just cut me off at the knees.
And then the other one, so We Are the Flesh. That's pretty out and proud.
Ooh, it is.
Yeah, there's no getting around it. It's not metaphorical.
No.
That was probably the most hated film we've shown.
Oh, really?
I think so. Yeah, people really. I thought there were good people were not going to come back. I think
good people.
They were not happy. And then the other one that is a little bit more subtle, though, We Are What We Are.
Oh yeah,
which is mainly a cannibalism film. But
yeah.
There is definitely.
It sure is.
Yeah,
love that movie too.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, I mean both versions, but the original Spanish language version is the best. But the English language version is good too.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, those are all good. Also Rans, I guess, bubbling under the top 6, top 5. So let's get into it. And this is one that we showed this.
We did.
Yeah, we showed this at Fright Club sometime recently. Now I'm starting to forget since we haven't been back on a regular basis. But this is from originally 2012. It's Reg and Lindsay running an organic fertilizer business. They need a fresh supply of their secret ingredient to process through the meat grinder. Reg comes across 2 guys and a girl with a broken-down vehicle on their way to a music festival, and hijinks ensue in 100 Bloody Acres.
Charlie Wick wants new blend. He's gonna get new blend. We hot-bone the lot of them now.
No one's gonna be hot-boning no one.
You're not a bad person. You're a good person who's just done some bad things.
No use holding for a marshal out here, boys. You're on 100 bloody acres.
Don't you dare hurt her, you psycho!
We're not psychos, all right? We're small business operators.
I'll be honest with you, when you had this on the list, I had to search my mind a little bit to think, what does that qualify? And it's not one that jumped to my mind, but I enjoyed it. And I think when we showed it, our crowd enjoyed it because it was even more of a comedy than I expected. And I think it was more of a comedy than the filmmakers thought they were going to make. But as the production went along, they just started writing more jokes.
Right. It is one of those. And it's funny that you say that because it's a movie that I recommended to my sister and her husband. And we recommend we recommend a lot of horror films. And the title, 100 Bloody Acres. They're like, no. And I'm like, no. It's New Zealand. It's actually Australian, but I confuse the two sometimes. And it's really funny. It's the only one on the list that uses incest as a comic device, although you can find a lot of films that do that. And it's Aunt Nancy. So the two brothers, they run this fertilizer plant together. The one of them is a little closer to Aunt Nancy than the other one is. But you're right. I mean, it's so that's a comedic element, but the whole movie is full of really funny bits.
Yeah, and actually the film's co-director, Colin Cairns, said that they started out, they wanted to just go full Texas Chainsaw Massacre, just blood all over the place and be real solidly horror about it. But then they said as they were writing it, they found themselves just writing more jokes and they couldn't help themselves. They just went with it. And it works.
Oh, it really does.
It's
the delivery is great.
Yeah.
There's this whole funny sort of meandering side plot about getting high. And you know what? If you really want to save yourself and your friends from certain doom, don't get high first.
No.
That's never a good plan.
No, you just get kind of lazy and want to sit down somewhere comfy. And I love the tagline, they're not psycho killers, they're just small business operators. So 100 Bloody Acres. From 2012. What was that when we showed it? What was our topic that night? It wasn't incest, I know.
Farming,
of course.
Yeah,
that's the one that jumps to mind for 100 Bloody Acres. So if that's not on your radar or slipped through the cracks, look that up. Originally from 2012, and number 6 on our list of incest horror. And moving up to number 5, this is one that's been on maybe more lists than. Well, there are 2 on here that have got to be 1 and 2 or tied. for being included on the most list. But you know what? That's all right. It's good reason. When a successful country lawyer captures and attempts to civilize the last remaining member of a violent clan that has roamed the Northeast coast for decades, he puts the lives of his family in jeopardy. The woman.
This is our project, and it's a secret.
What are we gonna do with her?
We're gonna help her. We're gonna train her, civilize her, free her from herself, from her baser instincts.
Do you really think we should be doing this? Do we really get to keep her?
We do.
I find it funny that the synopsis for that film focuses on Chris Cleek, on the patriarch of the family.
I try to find different ones.
Yeah,
You know?
it's just a fun. I like it. It's a funny idea because there's a bizarro world way of looking at this where he is the hero, right? I mean, he isn't. He is the villain. But the way Lucky McKee cast this, the atmosphere is one of those sort of perfect families with all of this going on beneath. But what he has going on beneath is so much worse than what you were imagining.
And we should say how great Sean Bridgers is.
Oh, God, he's so good.
As Chris Cleek. I mean, talk about punchable faces.
That's a list.
Yeah, that is a list. And he's got one in this movie and he's just, giving you that little smile. And it is the subversive humor. As brutal as this film is, the subversive humor just gets me. And I was talking about dark humor a lot this week, defending my recommendation of the film Fat Man. I love dark humor.
Yeah.
And even, dark subversive humor. And this film has it. You were just talking about the nuclear family and digging into it with this brutal story of this woman they have captured and chained up.
Right. And that's not even where the incest comes in.
Right.
You got to wonder how the dogs in the barn, how they came about, what's going on there. There's a lot of questions being unanswered, but, at the center of it is poor Peggy, who is pregnant. And that's, just one of many of the internal family dysfunctions, like beneath the surface of this incredibly sunshiny, bacon cookies and learning to civilize this woman in the barn. I mean, the movie is so dark that it almost feels like it itself is satirizing all of those, beneath the surface is these, because it's just like, oh no, we're going. That's the thing, and I've said this before. We reviewed this movie for the newspaper back when people would send you, instead of links, they would send you DVDs. And instead of coming in like a plastic case, the DVD for the woman came in a vomit bag.
That's a good sign.
It is.
Usually that's a good sign.
And I think this is the longest we've ever gone about talking about this movie without mentioning the glorious Pollyanna McIntosh.
I'll tell you, we have a lot in common, I think. Have you ever noticed that? I was just going to say that because normally you're right out there with Pollyanna McIntosh, boom, because she's great in this.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable. I mean, it's a very difficult film to watch. If you're a listener of this podcast for any length of time at all, you know that I love this movie so much. And in fact, it was the whole reason we started the live event. This was the first movie. I'm like, oh, we want to show that. It's not the first movie we got to show because it was difficult to get.
It took a while, yeah.
It did, but this was the movie that inspired Fright Club Live.
And I really enjoyed the conversation, mainly listening to it, years ago when we did feminist horror, and this was included on that. And a lot of people maybe on a superficial level might go, what?
Right.
But how you and our guest that time, Melissa Starker, got into it and deconstructed it as feminist, which I totally agreed with. I loved it.
Oh, yeah. It is. It's a great movie for a lot of different reasons. And really, the incest is, were it not because that Peggy and her situation wind up being sort of a driving force in the film, it would just be one of the other horrible things that are going on in this house. But because it is pretty pivotal to the plot, and because I like to talk about the woman, and we haven't for a minute, it's on the list.
And am I misremembering? The actress here is also in Jugface.
Yes.
Is she not?
Yes, she is. Lauren
Ashley Carter.
Yeah.
Yeah, she plays Peggy. And because when you said Jugface, I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Doesn't it share an actor? Yeah, I knew she was in that. So the woman, on so many lists.
Chris Cleek is in it too.
He's in Jugface too?
He is. Sean Bridgers is also in Jugface, yeah.
He shows up in so many things.
I can't tell you how many times, he's in the movie Room. So he's just the guy you cast when you need somebody who would lock somebody in their shed, I guess.
That's a niche, and he is really exploring it. But The Woman, from 2011, certainly one of our favorites, and number 5 on this list of incest in horror. Moving up to number 4, and this is an uncomfortable film for a lot of reasons. This is from 1993. It centers on Bubby, who has spent 30 years trapped in the same small room, tricked by his mother, and one day he manages to escape, and deranged and naive in equal measure, his adventure into the modern and nihilistic life begins. Bad Boy Bubby.
Bad boy Bubby went on a voyage of discovery. And the world he confronted was funny.
Get off the road, you fucking quota bastard!
Tragic, loving, and hateful.
Oh, shit!
Honest
Fappy cat.
and hypocritical.
God doesn't like fat people.
And totally unlike any you've ever seen before. Bad boy Bubby. All he needs is love.
I think the first thing to point out when you talk about this movie, because a lot of people haven't seen it, it's pretty underseen, and I think a lot of people, when they listen to this podcast, they'll think to themselves, "Oh, this is a recommendation. I should go watch this movie." I think that this is an incredibly interesting, fascinating, well-made movie with one of the best performances really ever. But you need to know that there is a cat that dies during the course of the movie, and in fact, they kill the cat. It in fact happens. So I know that's for many, many people, maybe most people, reason enough not to see it, which I completely understand.
Yeah, and if you can look it up, and you can find there is a citation that says the cat that was killed in the movie was killed humanely by a vet and not suffocated, as it is in the movie. So, yeah, but still, that's going to be uncomfortable.
Yes.
For a lot of people.
And and for a lot of people, unnecessary.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't. Even if you needed that to happen in the film, why did it have to be a real? So anybody,
I understand why you want to put that out there for anybody that hasn't seen it, but it's a fascinating movie for a lot of different reasons. The lead performance is crazy good, and the way it looks,
Nicholas Hope. He is unbelievably good in this movie.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
Because you think about his character, that's the whole setup. He's been in this room for 3 decades. Now he's coming out into the world. And what are going to be his expectations about how the world is? It's fascinating. And they used over 30 different directors of photography to give a new place that Bubby went, to give the film more of an experimental feel and limit and take away the worry of always having to have the same crew on set every day. But every place he goes is a new world to him, so it has a new look.
Right.
I love that idea.
It is a great idea. Yeah, it's writer-director Ralph DeHeer, Ralph DeHeer. And it is such a it is a really experimental film. I mean, it absolutely is. And it turns into almost like a punk rock show, which is fascinating too. And it's so, there is something completely surreal and yet weirdly authentic about everything that happens in the movie. And because Bubby is so innocent, you don't hold it against him, the horrible things that he does, and you cannot help but root for him.
Which is really unexpected.
It is. It's, at times very funny, and you almost want to stop yourself from laughing. Yeah, it is an absolutely bizarre movie.
It is. And you can only guess when I say that he was in the same room for 30 years how incest works its way into this movie. If you haven't seen it, you can probably guess.
Yeah, and it's not pleasant as it's not meant to be. But
Right.
I mean, the movie is a train wreck in the best possible sense.
Yeah, and it really feels experimental, but a good experiment, and it feels like you're watching something that really you haven't seen before.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's really worth checking out. But again, fair warning about the cat. Bad Boy Bubby from 1993, number 4 on our list of incest horror. Up to number 3. This is a classic. This is another one that has been on many a list for Fright Club. It is the story of Henry, a drifter, committing a series of brutal murders, supposedly operating with impunity. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer from 1986.
You telling me you never killed anybody before?
I ain't saying that.
Open your eyes, Otis. Look look at the world. It's either you or them. You know what I
mean. Number one thing I have to say about this movie is that I just learned that director John McNaughton has in pre-production a film based on Flannery O'Connor's A Good Man Is Hard to Find.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not. Which
wow.
is, it's my favorite writer of all time, Flannery O'Connor. And that is my either top number one or number two favorite short story of all time. That is the bleakest story. And Michael Rooker is in the cast. Is the only person yet listed in the cast. And how bleak is the film going to be? The guy who's writing the adaptation is the guy who wrote The Passion of the Christ. So,
wow.
Potentially brutal. Anyway, I am giddy.
Yeah, I did not. You just found out today?
Just when I was looking up, I was looking up.
That is amazing.
The year that this came out.
Now, see, that's going to be another instance of how well you can flesh out something short.
It is pretty short, too.
Into a feature film.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm fascinated by that. But, we've talked about Henry for many different reasons, and talk about feeling experimental. I'm trying to put myself in the head of watching this when it first came out.
Right.
Talk about feeling like, boy, that's something I've never seen. You know, I bet people at some point thought they were watching a snuff film or something.
Well,
it was so raw.
Especially in 1986, because when it came out, it was supposed to be a slasher. You know, it was supposed to be a serial killer slasher type film, which is absolutely the opposite of what you get. You know, and it's so morally bankrupt, morally bleak. You're so used to watching the protagonists, the leads, if they're not the heroes, they're the anti-heroes. And there's some reason you can at least hope that eventually they're going to, but he's never going to see the right thing. You know what I mean? And so that it's so, I think, subversive the way McNaughton develops this like workaday camaraderie between these two villainous men. And because you're watching and participating, it's almost like you're part of that community. So unlike when, say, Tarantino develops these hitmen, they do terrible things, and yet he's showing you sort of this cool side of them. But you can find something worthwhile in those men in Tarantino films. There's nothing worthwhile in these men.
Yeah, and as a lot of people know, a lot of it was based on serial killer Henry Lee Lucas. In fact, they really patterned some of the murders in this movie after the facts of actual murders that Henry Lee Lucas committed. But yeah, even though it's credited as 1986, it didn't get released until 1989, which we've talked about before. And like you said, it was supposed to be a slasher because the producers, after they got McNaughton on board, they just kind of walked away and said, just do a slasher movie, do a horror movie, and everybody thinks that's an easy way to get profitable, right? And then he got this, and they turned it in, and they had no idea what to do with it. Because it was so anti of what they were looking for.
Right. It's the opposite. It really is. Michael Rooker is just perfection in this role. But Tom Towles plays Otis. And one of the things that I think is so unnervingly brilliant about this movie is the way the film changes direction, changes trajectory when Otis crosses a line. And you've already seen what they've done together and how Henry is like, oh, you're telling me you've never killed a man? Well, I haven't said that. You know what I mean? Where it's like he's goading him into doing more and more horrific things just nonchalantly, as if I can't believe you've not done that. But when Otis gets horny with his own sister, well, that's it. The line is drawn. Otis has to die. It is so fascinating to me the way the film sets up this environment where
he's got a line. Yeah, because otherwise, and especially in the ending, there are no lines to his depravity. But right there, he thought that Otis crossed one. It is fascinating, and McNaughton has said, going back to Henry Lee Lucas, that when he knew his assignment basically from these producers was to write and come up with a horror movie, he didn't really know what he was going to write about, but he saw an episode of the show 2020, which was about Henry Lee Lucas, and that which has got him inspired to get on the trail of writing this. And it's one that we've come back to many times, and one still today just has such a primal nastiness.
Yeah, it does. It does, and and it's one of those movies where the end will kill you.
Oh. But it had to be that way.
It did.
What do you want him to do? Learn something?
No.
It had to be that way. And it's so just punch in the gut. But still holds up today. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer from 1986 or 1989. The number 3. Moving up to number 2 on our list of incest horror. This is the other one I was talked about. It's in the running for most mentions, I think. This is from 2009 when Brent turns down his classmate Lola's invitation to the prom. She concocts a wildly violent plan for revenge. The Loved Ones.
Will you go to the dance with me?
Sorry, Lola. I'm going with Holly.
I'm going to stab Holly in the heart, just like you did to me.
How many times do we just say to each other, hey, bright eyes.
Bright eyes.
Bright eyes in the bad Australian accent. This is no doubt one of your favorites. I mean, I like it, but I think I get wrongly accused of not liking it simply because I don't worship it.
Yeah, I do. I love everything about this movie.
Do.
And it's another one where I've tried not to talk about it for a while because it's true. I bring it up so often, but we showed it. It's one of the rare films we have actually shown twice because we showed it at the first theater, Studio 35, when we very first kicked it off, and then years later at Gateway, our home at Gateway, we showed it again. And it is a crowd pleaser because not a lot of people have seen it, and because it's just so weird.
Yeah, it's got a bit of well, it does. It has a stream of a thread of comedy running through it.
It does.
Not only through the main characters, but through that side plot of the goth girl.
Yep, absolutely, it does, and it has a real thread of grief running through it.
Yeah.
And they all actually tie together in Lola's basement. And one of the things there are so many different parts of this movie that deserve attention and sort of deconstruction and study. But the reason it's on this podcast is because of the utterly bizarre relationship between Lola and Daddy.
Yeah. And our favorite from Wolf Creek, John Jarrett, turned down the role of Daddy to avoid typecasting.
Wow.
Love me some John Jarrett. That would have been something. And props to Robin McLeavy.
Oh, she's so good.
Who plays Lola. And then remember the guy who plays her crush, Brent.
Yeah.
Xavier Samuel. Remember when we saw, it was the adaptation of...
Love and Friendship.
Love and Friendship.
Whit
which
Stillman's,
is great.
Yeah.
Is great, by the way. And we kept seeing this guy, this face. I know that guy. Who's that guy?
Yeah.
And it's him from The Loved Ones. And he looks totally different.
Oh, yeah.
And, of course, he's playing a totally different type of role. And when it hit me, I'm like, you got to be kidding.
Yes. Well, he doesn't have a drill hole in the front of his head, and
right,
so that throws you.
Right. And
that throws you right there.
And, of course, after that happens to his character, he doesn't really speak a lot.
No.
For obvious reasons. But this gets wild. And it's so pop cultural. It's so splashed with color,
yes,
and music,
yes,
and it seems stamped in time.
Oh my God! And that song, it'll be in your head for days.
Not pretty enough, Casey Chambers. Yeah, it is Casey Chambers.
It is
right?
Casey Chambers.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and in a weird way, as fun as a movie with this type of subject matter can be, it's fun.
It is fun, but it's so disturbing and it's so uncomfortable. And a lot of what makes you uncomfortable, well, there's a lot of physical reasons to be uncomfortable by this film. But Lola's relationship with her dad is so troubling. She seems ready to move to the next level with her dad, and he seems to be longing but taking a step backwards. And the whole thing is but she's the princess. She's his princess, and she is. And he's got a great big pink crown for her. It is so uncomfortable. And it's such a weird balance between the outright grisly carnage that is going on in other parts of the house, and then what that sort of weird relationship between the father and the daughter is leading to at the table. I mean, it's such a subversive image of this pampered, spoiled daughter that I just loved it.
And without giving too much away, you can't technically, you cannot call Lola a serial killer here. She doesn't kill enough people to be branded in. Now, she does some other things.
Well, here's the thing. We don't know how many of those people down that basement are dead.
Just in the course of what we know.
Okay.
You can't specifically. You can call her nutso. You can call her a psycho. But just call her Lola, Lola. The Loved Ones, number 2 on our incest list, Bright Eyes. from 2009. Moving it up to number 1, and this is the one that is going to be a big spoiler just for having it on this list, but I guess we give fair warning, and a lot of people have already guessed it probably. After being kidnapped and imprisoned for 15 years, Odesu is released only to find that he must find his captor in 5 days. 2003, the original Old Boy.
How many masterpieces did Chan-wook Park have, right? Handmaiden, Stoker, Thirst, Lady Vengeance, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
and this
is Old Boy at the top?
probably. I think so. It's amazing for a different. It gets attention for so many different reasons. Of case you've got the bomb that drops here, that is what we're talking about. And then you've got that, of course, that corridor scene. That might have been one of the first things I heard about in the movie. The corridor scene that is done, the action there is insane.
It is insane. It's absolutely glorious. The first thing I heard about was the dental work.
Okay.
And then the other thing I heard about was the tongue.
Yeah.
So there's a definitely an oral fixation in this film.
Yeah. And it's fascinating. And as it goes along, the way the plot and story develops, on one hand, it's very pulpy, and it should feel less. It should feel more eye-rolling than it does.
Oh, yeah.
Now, it does in the sequel, which we won't talk. Not the sequel. It does in the remake. It doesn't here.
Yeah.
And I think that's a testament to how well he constructs the movie and how well everything is layered. Because when you think about it, if you just told somebody all the happenings, it would feel like, oh, really?
Yeah.
That's going to happen?
Right. Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. One of the things that he does so well is balancing one thing off something else. So, for example, Min-sik Choi, I'd also would just like to thank him for introducing us to the just glorious God that is Min-sik Choi. I love him so much.
Man can take a beating.
He can take a beating, and he's such a disheveled, wild man, you know? And so that is juxtaposed with the nemesis, played by Jai Tae-yu, who's very elegant and quiet and just sort of, the opposite, the visual opposite, the sort of his personality is the opposite. And yet what he's trying to prove is that, to a certain degree, they are the same. And why is that? Because the reason he hates Min-sik Choi's character is because he was having an affair with his sister, and she Old Boy outed him. Mm-hmm. And so he's constructed this entire bizarre. He could also be a great sort of planner. He's constructed this entire bizarre, extreme revenge, just based on this piece of unhappiness that Old Boy has caused him. And that he's going to cause Old Boy. And he does.
Mm-hmm. And actually, the name, the character's name, Dae-soo-oh, in Korean is actually read Oh-dae-soo. And that name originates from Oedipus, which makes total sense the way this plays out. Yeah, it's brutal and it's crazy that, like we talked about, that corridor scene where all of a sudden you get this sequence of action that is amazing.
Oh yeah, it's just
amazingly shot, and it's brutal, and then it leads to that reveal about what the revenge plan has been all these years. You're like, what?
Oh yeah.
And then of course the tongue, and it's when he's totally at his mercy. It's amazing. It's an amazing experience, even now. Even if you know what's coming, and hopefully we haven't spoiled it for anybody. But even if you do know what's coming, it's still 100% worth it.
Oh well, again, I mean, how many times have we seen it?
Yeah,
I love it every time.
A lot.
And of course, we know now what's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, definitely an experience. Like you said, Chan-wook Park, pretty much just see everything.
He has a TV show, Little Drummer Girl, which we haven't seen, and Francis Pugh stars. So we're going to have to find that.
What's that on? What network is that on?
I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know these things.
Missed that. We're not talking about TV. Talking about movies, talking about our list of top 6 in incest horror. And there you go. So what do you think? What did we miss? Let us know. It's easy way to keep the conversation going is on Twitter. You can find us at Fright Club Pod, and we love to keep talking. Love all your comments as well, and we expect some good ones here as we look forward to. Well, unfortunately, as we are talking about this, our home away from home, the Gateway Film Center, has had to do another pause.
Yes.
In service, hopefully for not long. So we have no plans to be back anytime soon in front of the crowd. But I'm sure we'll do another StreamYard.
Yeah.
Because those are fun.
They are fun.
We'll have to get one of those together and do something real interactive. But until then, what other topics are on the horizon? Do we have any?
Yes. The next one that we're going to record is with Corey Metcalf from the Rewatch podcast. And we are going to talk about planners, psychotic planners.
Okay.
And then the next one would be, we could do it live, the best horror of 2020.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's a good one to do live.
Yeah.
I can't believe we're going to be talking about that already. But yeah, check the calendar. We will be best horror of 2020, and there's some good ones in there for sure. So yeah, get in touch if you can. It's always good to hear from me. You can also find us, in addition to Twitter, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. It is Mad Wolf Columbus, and the main website where you can find all of our written reviews to all the new releases, both in theaters when we can do that and in home streaming, is at madwolf.com. You can also find our weekly podcast, The Screening Room, which covers all the new releases. Find it there on the main website as well. So fun stuff. This was, as fun as Incest could be, this was it. So good list, and we look forward to hearing from you next time.
And while you're here, if you would just take a minute and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, we'd appreciate it.
Ooh, that would be fun. So until next time, she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And this is the Fright Club Podcast.
Hi, this is Ben Young, director of Hounds of Love. Stay frightful, my friend.